Fairmont never intended to fall for London's most notorious rake. But when the enigmatic Duke Damien Blackthorn declares, "This one has bewitched me entirely," is this courtship merely an act of convenience, or the start of something neither of them can control? Welcome to Timeless Audio Novel Stories, where we bring you captivating tales of romance, drama, and mystery. If you love immersive storytelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes. Episode 1. Lady Cassandra Fairmont stared bleakly out the carriage window as the busy streets of London rolled by. After nearly a year in mourning following her parents' tragic deaths, Cassandra found herself reluctantly embarking on her first London season. She had been sent to stay with her mother's sister, Lady Eleanor Dolby, in hopes of making a suitable match before her modest inheritance was spent. As the carriage pulled up to her Aunt Eleanor's grand townhouse in Grosvenor Square, Cassandra steeled herself for the obligations to come. Since her debut, she would be expected to attend balls and soirees every night, all in service of finding a husband. The thought filled her with dread. Her Aunt Eleanor greeted her exuberantly at the door, already full of plans and gossip for the upcoming weeks. "Cassandra, my dear, let me have a look at you. Yes, I do believe with the right gowns and hair, we'll have the young gentleman beating down the door in no time." Over a lavish tea in the parlor, Aunt Eleanor filled Cassandra in on all the eligible bachelors she must set her sights on this season. And of course, you simply must meet Mr. Damien Blackthorn. His family owns half the docks in London, it seems, which more than makes up for his checkered reputation, shall we say. Cassandra had heard rumors of the elusive Mr. Blackthorn, who seemed to delight in shocking polite society. "I'm not certain a scandalous rake is the sort of match my uncle had in mind, Aunt. The reputation his family has is quite negative nonsense. A handsome face and full pocketbook can overcome nearly any scandal, and it never hurts to have powerful friends in your corner. You'll be the envy of every girl this season with Blackthorn on your arm, just you wait." In the coming days, Cassandra was paraded through an endless procession of social calls, teas, and shopping excursions to prepare her wardrobe. Lady Eleanor strode purposefully through the shops of Bond Street with Cassandra struggling to keep up whilst clutching stacks of silks and satins. "Now, for your first ball gown, I am thinking something in a pale blue celestial. It will bring out the color in your eyes perfectly." "Yes, Aunt," Cassandra replied tiredly. In the 3 days since her arrival, she felt she may collapse from exhaustion. Stopping to admire a lace trim, Eleanor prattled on, "Of course, you simply must make an impression if you hope to stand out among the crowd. And that means memorizing every detail about our targets, I mean, eligible bachelors. Cassandra bit back a groan as her aunt rattled off another name. Now, Lord Albert, second son, Charles. His estates in Sussex will make him a fine match. You recall his interests are hunting and horses, yes? I believe so, Aunt. Though I find it difficult to keep all the names and lineages straight, Cassandra said with a pleading look. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. Nonsense, my dear. You'll have it memorized in no time. Then it's on to Albert's hobbies and what his mother likes to gossip about over tea. All vital intel for a clever girl to snare a husband. That evening, as they reviewed her notes by lamplight, Cassandra's eyes blurred over the pages of names. But she knew to keep such complaints to herself, and dutifully recited back all she had learned about Lord Albert and the dozen other hopeful bachelors. While exhaustion pulled at her, Cassandra steeled her resolve for the challenges yet to come. With her first ball only a week away, the pressure was mounting to find a match. The night of her debut ball arrived. Cassandra's aunt spent hours dressing and primping her until she felt like a performing monkey. When they arrived at the lavish Edward estate, Cassandra was immediately overwhelmed by the glittering crowd. She kept to the perimeter of the ballroom, silently observing the elegant waltzes and lively conversations swirling around her. That was when she spotted him across the room, Mr. Damien Blackthorn, looking broodier and more handsome than rumor had led her to believe. His piercing blue eyes scanned the crowd with cool indifference until landing upon hers, and she quickly looked away. Just then, a disheveled man urgently approached Blackthorn, discussing in hushed tones. The nonchalant expression Blackthorn had on his face immediately changed to one of frustration and anger, and Cassandra grew eager to listen in on their conversation. Blackthorn then left with the man, and Cassandra followed as curiosity got the better of her. She had quietly followed them outside as they looked for private areas to discuss. "It's Barnes, sir. He was jumped near the docks tonight," the man whispered hastily. "Got a right pounding and claims it was rivals trying to muscle in on our shipments coming in Monday." Blackthorn's expression remained impassive, but his eyes flashed dangerously. Which supplies? The usual opium and French silks? Or was he foolishly carrying? Cassandra leaned in, fascinated yet apprehensive about what secrets she might uncover regarding Blackthorn's notorious enterprises. Just then a hand grabbed her shoulder, jolting her with a start. "Cassandra, there you are," her aunt scolded. "I've had half the eligible bachelors asking after you. Now come, Lord Walters has secured you the next 2 dances, and I won't have you miss this chance to charm him." As her aunt dragged her reluctantly inside, Cassandra cast one last glance at the dark and brooding Mr. Blackthorn, more intrigued than ever by his mysterious past and questionable dealings. What truly lay beneath the veneer of London society's most ruled over Duke? She was determined to find out. After enduring several dull dances with partners her aunt introduced, Cassandra escaped to the gardens for a reprieve. That was when disaster struck. Lost in thought among the rose bushes, she failed to notice the dark figure approaching until it was too late. A strong arm suddenly grabbed her from behind, pressing a gloved hand over her mouth to muffle her scream. Cassandra fought to steady her racing pulse as the odious man released her. Before she could demand an explanation, another figure stepped from the shadows. "See here, Branson, is that any way to treat a lady?" scolded the newcomer. "Especially one who is to be my wife." Cassandra bristled. "I beg your pardon, but I am not any man's affianced." The stranger bowed apologetically. "Forgive me, you are quite right. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Lord Edmund Barmouth. I found myself quite captivated watching you in the ballroom and wished to claim your first dance. While I understand the desire to further one's lineage, my interests lay elsewhere this evening," Cassandra retorted icily. "And in any case, I've no wish to be manhandled or spoken for without introduction." Lord Barmouth pressed on, undeterred. "Please, give me a chance to redeem this unfortunate first meeting. I would be honored if you would end your search and consent to be my wife tonight." His flattery and persistence only intensified Cassandra's discomfort. Seeing no polite means of escape, she replied sharply, "If you'll excuse me, my aunt awaits." "Good evening, Lord Barmouth. Please, say you will consent to be my wife. With your fair looks and my status, we would be the envy of the ton. End the search and make me the happiest of men by accepting my proposal tonight." Cassandra's irritation remained, though she inclined her head politely. "You are too kind, my lord." However, she made to depart, but Barmouth grasped her arm insistently whilst cutting her short. "Do not deny me so hastily, my dear. I'd give you a life far better than any of these young insatiable rakes out there." His flattery and presumptuousness only served to further unsettle Cassandra. "I am afraid I must decline, my lord. Now if you will excuse me," she said, but Barmouth only proved to be a pest. He touched her inappropriately, and she tried to remove his hands without causing a scene because she knew what it meant for her to be caught alone with him whereas unmarried. But as Lord Barmouth continued his importuning, Cassandra spied a familiar figure approaching from the shadows of the gardens. To her surprise, it was Mr. Damien Blackthorn himself. Just then, Barmouth grabbed her wrist, leaning in uncomfortably close. "Come now, my dear, there's no need to play coy. I can show you pleasures beyond your wildest imaginings." Blackthorn's sharp gaze took in the distressing scene with a glance. Striding over promptly, he intervened by taking Cassandra's hands gently on his own. "I must insist you unhand the lady, Lord Barmouth. She is intended to be the one I court for the evening, is she not?" Lord Barmouth withdrew sulkily. "So the great rake Blackthorn has finally come in from the cold, has he? I never took you for the settling type." Though clearly angered by the jibe, Blackthorn remained composed. "Even a scoundrel like myself knows better than to trifle with a lady under my protection," he replied. Fixing Cassandra with an intense look, he continued, "This one has bewitched me entirely, it seems. I find myself overwhelmed by my love for her." Cassandra startled at this sudden declaration, locking eyes with Blackthorn in surprise and no small amount of confusion. Was this an act to save her from Barmouth's lecherous advances? Or could he have caught her eavesdropping and his meeting with her was by no chance? Lord Barmouth huffed in irritation. "I see I have overstayed my welcome. Please accept my apologies for any distress caused, Lady Cassandra. Good evening to you both." With that he stormed off, leaving Cassandra quite shaken by the ordeal. "Let's get out of here before someone sees us and thinks otherwise," Duke Blackthorn said, as they both walked away from the gardens and towards the ballroom. As they walked in an uncomfortable silence, Cassandra summoned her courage. "Duke Blackthorn, you saw me in the gardens, eavesdropping on your conversation earlier, didn't you?" Blackthorn regarded her thoughtfully. "Yes, I noticed you listening in on my dealings." Cassandra met his gaze steadily. "Were you following me as well, by chance?" A barely perceptible smile curled his lips. "I did follow you after I noticed. Now, pray tell, what exactly did you hear?" Recalling the ominous references, she ventured, "Enough that the rumors painting your enterprises in questionable colors appear, not entirely without merit." His eyes hardened at the implication before retorting calmly, "Then I too could disclose to the ton how an unmarried gentlewoman was accosted alone in the gardens this eve. How swiftly that would ruin your reputation, my dear." She gasped, fearing his threat. Blackthorn continued, "Then it seems for both our sakes, discretion is required. What do you propose, Lady Cassandra?" Seeing an opportunity, she struck a bargain. "Pretend to court me this season." "What?" "No," Blackthorn rejected immediately. "My Aunt Eleanor has always been going on and on about having you court me. She derives great pleasure in knowing that I'd be the envy of the ton and many other debutantes like myself," Cassandra explained further. "Now, is it really your aunt or you?" Duke Blackthorn asked with his eyes narrowed. Cassandra wondered how elegant ladies fell for a rake like himself. "I'd rather marry the ugliest dwarf in town than to derive joy from being courted by a scandalous duke," Cassandra said with a grin. Blackthorn, trying to hide his shame, then asked what he was going to gain from the fake courtship. "You won't tell anyone about Lord Barmouth, and I shall of course keep your indiscretions buried in the past." Blackthorn considered her proposal and saw the merits. With a nod, he said, "Very well, you have yourself a deal." "Great. What do we do now?" Cassandra asked with a hint of embarrassment in her tone. "Shall we?" Duke Blackthorn asked as he got out his hands for Cassandra to hold a grip of. Taking his arm, Cassandra steeled herself to face whatever scandals the season may bring, walking in with London's most controversial bachelor by her side. The grand ballroom was a vision of luxuriance, with glittering chandeliers casting a warm glow over the assembled guests. Conversations and soft laughters filled the air. However, as Cassandra and Duke Blackthorn made their entrance, hand in hand, the ballroom fell silent. All eyes were transfixed upon the striking yet unlikely pair. Cassandra's aunt, Lady Eleanor Witherspoon, found herself frozen in disbelief. Her carefully powdered features contorted into an expression of utter bewilderment. She couldn't believe that her dear niece had managed to ensnare the most sought-after rake of the season, whereas so many women had failed. Eleanor's lips parted as she leaned towards one of the women beside her. "That young lady on the Duke's arm," she whispered with pride and apprehension, "is my niece, Cassandra." Rather than the admiration Eleanor had anticipated, her words were met with a response that sent a chill down her spine. The woman's face was etched with relief. She raised her eyes heavenward and uttered a fervent, "Thank the Lord." Eleanor's brow furrowed as the woman continued with her tone laced with disdain. "My daughter has been utterly crazed over the Duke, but his family's reputation far outweighs any wealth or looks he may possess. I would not wish for her, or our family, to be associated with the Blackthorns under any circumstances." With a self-satisfied nod, the woman turned her attention elsewhere, leaving Eleanor to ponder the weight of her decision to allow the Duke's courtship of her beloved niece. Had she been too hasty in her judgment, blinded by the allure of his title and fortune? As the whispers and sidelong glances continued to swirl around the ballroom, Eleanor couldn't help but feel a knot of fear tighten in her chest. The path she had set Cassandra upon was one fraught with peril, and only time would reveal the true consequences of her choice. Hence, she wasted no time in seeking out her niece. Her brow was furrowed with concern as she approached Cassandra, who stood alone because the Duke had just left her. "Cassandra, my dear, might I have a word?" Eleanor's tone was tinged with urgency as she drew her niece aside with her eyes darting about the ballroom. Cassandra met her aunt's gaze with a serene smile, seemingly undisturbed by the whispers that swirled around them. "Of course, Aunt. What troubles you?" Eleanor leaned in closer in a hushed tone. "How did you come to be acquainted with the Duke?" "We met in the gardens, Aunt. It was by chance, but I assure you, entirely proper." Eleanor's expression hardened and her eyes narrowed as though she suspected her niece of being less than forthcoming. "Entirely proper?" she asked, suspicious of Cassandra's statement. "You were not compromised, were you, child?" Cassandra's eyes widened in shock. Her hands flew to her mouth as she realized the implication behind her aunt's words. "Aunt Eleanor, I assure you, nothing untoward has occurred between the Duke and myself. In fact, he rescued me from Lord Barmouth's unwanted advances." Eleanor's brow arched quizzically. "Barmouth? But surely he would have been a more suitable match for you, my dear. A respected man of his standing." Cassandra recoiled as though she had been struck. Her delicate features twisted into a grimace of disgust. "That lecherous old man? I would be more nursemaid than wife, attending to his every wheezy breath and caring for him as one would a child, or worse, a parent." She shuddered at the thought. Turning her gaze back to her aunt, Cassandra's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "But why this sudden change of heart, Aunt? Only days ago, you seemed quite taken with the idea of me being courted by the Duke." Eleanor's shoulders sagged as a heavy sigh escaped her lips. "His family's reputation precedes him, my dear. I had hoped that your association with him would elevate our standing within the ton, but alas, it seems the opposite is true," she confessed while shaking her head. "The mothers here are delighted that the Duke is no longer available, freeing their daughters to pursue more respectable suitors with cleaner fortunes. But I cannot simply extricate myself from this situation, Aunt. I am already entangled with a notorious rake, as you so eloquently put it. The rumors, the whispers, the attention, it would be a scandal from which I might never recover if I were to leave." As Cassandra and Lady Eleanor debated the merits of her association with the Duke, a tall, finely dressed gentleman approached them. His steps and his manner exuded the confidence of one of the town's most eligible bachelors. With a bow, he turned his gaze towards Cassandra as his eyes sparkled with admiration. "Miss Witherspoon," he began with his rich baritone voice carrying the slightest hint of eagerness. "Although I am aware of the Duke's courtship, might I be so bold as to request the honor of a dance?" Cassandra's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes instinctively sought out the Duke, who stood across the ballroom, engaged in conversation with his friends. As if sensing her gaze upon him, Blackthorn glanced in her direction, offering a slight nod and a gentle smile, an unspoken permission to indulge in the simple pleasure of a dance. With a gracious smile, Cassandra turned back to the hopeful suitor, inclining her head in acquiescence. "I would be delighted, sir." Across the room, the Duke Blackthorn was with his closest friends, Jamie and Charles, and their faces were alight with sly grins and knowing looks. Well, if it isn't the esteemed Duke Blackthorn himself," Charles drawled while raising his glass in a mocking salute. "I propose a toast to our dear friend, finally settling down and taking a wife." Blackthorn's brow furrowed, and he quickly corrected his overeager friend. "I am merely courting Miss Witherspoon for the season," he stated firmly. "Nothing more." Jamie's eyes widened, and he let out a low whistle. "If this courtship does not culminate in marriage, my friend, it shall be quite the scandal for the poor lady." Blackthorn's expression hardened with his jaw clenching as he regarded his friends with a steely gaze. "I care not for the whispers of the town nor how scandalous it'd be for the lady," he declared. "I have no intentions of settling down, now or ever." As the waltz began, the man who had asked Cassandra for a dance bowed gallantly before her. "I am Marquis Bethel, my lady. May I have the pleasure?" Up close, his handsome smile didn't quite reach icy eyes. Still, Cassandra accepted with a polite curtsy. "Lady Cassandra Fairmont, my lord." "A pleasure." They joined the whirling dancers. Cassandra was light on her feet, thanks to lessons since girlhood. "By such skill, one would think you've been dancing for years," Bethel exclaimed. Cassandra laughed, flattered by his charm. "You flatter me, my lord. Though it's only my first season, I hope not to embarrass myself amongst society's experts like yourself." Her teasing banter put Bethel at ease as his rigid formality began melting. "My dear Lady Cassandra, this rake may know his way around a ballroom, but you've quite stolen my heart already tonight." As they conversed gaily, Blackthorn watched from a distance with jealousy brewing within. All too soon the waltz drew to a close, though Bethel lingered close. Cassandra smiled, breathless and flushed from the dance. But then his hands began to wander boldly where none had strayed before, and Cassandra cautioned him gently. Then he smiled apologetically and kept his roaming hands to himself. Then he laughed darkly. "Alas, you see straight through me, Lady Cassandra. I find myself bewitched by your beauty and spirit." And gradually again, his hands began pressing more familiar trails down her sides and waist. Politely Cassandra demurred, "My lord, propriety." But soon his roaming grew bolder yet, sending a flush of unease through her. Helpless, Cassandra could only murmur weak protests as Bethel's hands began straying again. She struggled for composure, loathing to cause a scandal. Across the hall, Duke Blackthorn idly chatted with his friends after they had caught him watching Cassandra dance with Marquis Bethel with interest after he had claimed to not care about Cassandra. Just then, Jamie tapped his arm urgently. "Blackie, have you seen what that scoundrel Bethel is on about?" "You better intervene fast," Jamie advised. Blackthorn's eyes narrowed, and he immediately strode to meet them just as the song ended. "That will be all for the evening, don't you think, Bethel?" Bethel sneered defiantly. "I'm not done with the fair lady." Blackthorn curled his lip as he walked away with Cassandra in his arms, ignoring whatever Bethel had to say. "You and I both know Cassandra won't be enough to tame you. After all, why would you want to be tamed when you're the most drooled over rake in town?" "Cassandra, if I were you, I'd give other bachelors a chance," Bethel advised, and immediately, Blackthorn punched him in the face. A sickening crunch and spray of blood sent the Marquis reeling back with a groan. All around, the crowd gasped in mingled horror and delight, buzzing with shock and disbelief. Don't you ever speak to my future wife in such manner, Blackthorn warned, and in that moment, Cassandra couldn't believe that she had started seeing him as more than a crook of a duke. Blackthorn then guided her to another part of the dance floor. The slow, melodic notes of the violinist filled the air around them. Cassandra couldn't help but feel a flutter of unease as the Marquis's earlier words about Blackthorn's past still replayed in her mind. But as his strong arms encircled her waist, drawing her close, she found herself momentarily lost in the moment. "Thank you for saving me, again," she murmured with her gaze meeting his. "But you didn't need to make such a scene. Now everyone is whispering and gossiping." Blackthorn's lips curled into a faint smile. "Then let me give them something else to gossip about." Before Cassandra could react, he had taken her chin in his hand with his intense gaze holding her captive. Time seemed to slow as he leaned in and kissed her passionately. The ballroom erupted in cheers and applause, but Cassandra was oblivious to everything except the man holding her in his arms. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the past love life of the Duke, not the whispers of the ton, not even the reason they had agreed to this courtship in the first place. As the ball drew to a close, Cassandra found herself reluctantly parting ways with Blackthorn. She watched with a hint of disappointment in her eyes as he pressed a gentle kiss to her cheek. "I'm afraid I must be off, Lady Fairmont," he murmured with his gaze locking with hers. "But I shall be in touch, you have my word." Cassandra nodded with a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I understand. Would you like to meet my aunt before you go?" But Blackthorn was already in a rush to leave. "I shall surprise you." Cassandra let out a soft sigh, turning to find her aunt and making her way towards her. "My dear, the talk of the ton tonight has been you," Eleanor exclaimed with a proud smile on her face. "Despite the Duke's family's less-than-stellar reputation, people are saying you found a match on your first try. That's quite the bragging rights." "I don't even know why I was worried earlier." Cassandra felt a flush creep up her cheeks as she recalled the passionate kiss Blackthorn had bestowed upon her earlier. "He kissed me in front of everyone, and he called me his future wife." She shrieked. Her aunt's eyes widened as a knowing look crossed her features. "I saw, my dear. But don't let one kiss get your head in the clouds. Tell me, do you truly believe the Duke intends to marry you in the end?" Cassandra hesitated as her gaze fell to the floor. The truth was, she wasn't entirely sure. What if he doesn't truly care for her at all? What if this is all just part of some larger scheme? Blackthorn's past love life, all of it remained a mystery to her. She knew not to let her heart get too involved as she remembered that it was initially a courtship of convenience, not one of the heart. And yet, despite her better judgment, she found herself slowly, irrevocably falling for the enigmatic Duke. Damien Blackthorn sank deeper into the steaming bath. The water lapped at his weary shoulders as his mother's voice rang out through his bedchamber. "What is this I hear, Damien?" she demanded with her brow furrowed in a mix of disappointment and anger. "After all my persuasion, you found a match, and one I don't approve of, no less? I thought you had no intention of settling down, at least not for many seasons to come." Damien let out a heavy sigh while running a hand through his damp hair. "Relax, mother." Deep down he cared about Cassandra's feelings, but he was willing to do whatever it took to protect his family's legacy, even if it meant manipulating her. Meanwhile, Cassandra's fingers danced across the piano keys, and a soothing melody filled the air as her friend Elizabeth paced the room with her brow furrowed in frustration. "This is my second season, Cassandra, and I still can't find a match." Elizabeth lamented with her voice tinged with despair. "Perhaps it's my nose, or maybe the shape of my hips. No wonder the bachelors keep running the other way." Cassandra paused and offered her friend a sympathetic smile. "Don't worry, Elizabeth. Love has a way of finding us, even when we least expect it." "Easy for you to say." Elizabeth huffed while plopping down on the settee. "You, with your first season, and already Duke Blackthorn is referring to you as his future wife, not to mention that scandalous kiss." Cassandra felt a flush creep up her cheeks. "Elizabeth, please don't be swayed by all of that. I'm not even sure the Duke truly likes me enough to marry me." Her friend's eyes widened, and Cassandra quickly held up a hand, silencing her before she could speak. "There's more, Elizabeth. I lied to the Duke. I told him I had overheard something about the contraband he was smuggling, only because he caught me in a compromising situation with a lord. So, we struck a deal. He decided to court me so we could keep each other's secret, Cassandra confessed. Elizabeth's jaw dropped, and Cassandra winced as she let out a shocked scream. Cassandra, how could you? I thought the Duke was genuinely in love with you and you with him. So the kiss, the dance, the whole future wife thing, it was all an act. Cassandra nodded with a pleasing gaze. Please, Elizabeth, you must not tell a soul. If my aunt or anyone were to find out. The sound of footsteps approaching had them both freezing, and Cassandra shot Elizabeth with a warning look. Hush, before Aunt Eleanor comes to see what's the matter. The two women sat in tense silence, and the weight of Cassandra's confession hung heavily in the air. Finally, the footstep that approached them revealed itself as that of her maid. She came in with a letter. Lady Cassandra, this letter came in for you. It's from the Blackthorns, the maid giggled. I thought I told you to quit snooping around my personal letters, Cassandra gently warned. My apologies, my lady, the maid said softly. Cassandra eyed the letter warily as the maid scurried out of the room while Elizabeth's eyes practically sparkled with excitement. Well, open it, her friend urged while leaning in closer. With a resigned sigh, Cassandra broke the seal and unfolded the crisp parchment. Her eyes scanned the elegant script. Miss Cassandra Fairmont, she read aloud with her brow furrowing. It is with great pleasure that I, Damien Blackthorn, Duke of Westbridge, extend an invitation to you, Aunt, to dine with my family this evening at our estate. We, most especially I, would be honored by your presence, and I look forward to the opportunity to continue our acquaintance. Cassandra paused and her cheeks flushed as she glanced up at Elizabeth, who was practically vibrating with excitement. Please send word of your acceptance at your earliest convenience. I remain, your humble Duke, Damien Blackthorn. The room fell silent for a moment until Elizabeth squealed for joy. Cassandra, do you realize what this means? She exclaimed as her eyes widened. The Duke himself has invited you to dine with his family. This is a most auspicious occasion. Cassandra bit her lip as her gaze returned to the letter. I suppose so. But, Elizabeth, you know as well as I do that this courtship is not what it seems. I'm not even certain the Duke truly cares for me. Her friend waved a dismissive hand. Nonsense. Why else would he invite you to his estate, if not to further your relationship? Elizabeth leaned in with a mischievous glint in her eye. Perhaps he plans to propose. Cassandra felt her heart skip a beat at the thought, but she quickly pushed it aside. Elizabeth, please. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. How delusional can you be, for God's sakes? I must speak with Aunt Eleanor about this invitation and then decide how to proceed. As she folded the letter and tucked it safely away, Cassandra couldn't help but wonder what the Duke's true intentions were. Cassandra felt nervous as Aunt Eleanor bustled about the room with her eyes sparkling with excitement. She had ordered the maids to bring in an array of gowns, each more extravagant than the last, as she fussed over Cassandra's appearance. Really, Aunt, you're doing too much, Cassandra protested, though she couldn't help but feel a twinge of gratitude at her aunt's enthusiasm. Nonsense, my dear, Eleanor exclaimed as her fingers deftly arranged the delicate lace trim of a pale blue gown. When it comes to the Blackthorns, nothing is too much. You must look your absolute best. As the maid began tending to Cassandra's hair, she complimented Cassandra for her beauty and told her that with the way she looked, the Duke will fall in love with her all over again, but Cassandra felt a twinge of self-consciousness. Do you really think the Duke will fall in love with me all over again? She asked with her voice barely above a whisper. The maid paused while offering Cassandra a warm smile. Why, of course, my lady. You are simply radiant. The Duke would be a fool not to be captivated by your beauty. Cassandra blushed. If only the Duke had been captivated by her from the start, she thought ruefully. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Cassandra and her aunt were ushered into the waiting carriage. The horses' hooves clipped against the cobblestone as they made their way to the Blackthorn estate. As they were welcomed into the grand foyer, Cassandra couldn't help but feel a sense of fear. Lady Blackthorn, the Duke's mother, greeted them warmly with her eyes crinkling with genuine warmth. "Miss Fairmont, Lady Eleanor, we are so pleased you could join us on such short notice," she said with a melodic tone. "Please, come in, come in. Dinner's nearly ready." Cassandra offered a polite smile with her gaze sweeping the lavish surroundings. As they dined, Cassandra couldn't help but notice the conspicuous absence of the Duke. She glanced over at Aunt Eleanor, who cleared her throat delicately. "Forgive me, Lady Blackthorn, but where is your son, the Duke? I was so looking forward to seeing him again." Lady Blackthorn offered a placating smile, though Cassandra detected a hint of unease in her expression. Yes, well, you know how it is. Damien is a very busy man with the family's business to attend to. I'm afraid he couldn't join us this evening." Cassandra felt a twinge of disappointment, but she quickly pushed it aside, offering the older woman a polite smile. Beside her, Aunt Eleanor nodded, though Cassandra could see the skepticism in her eyes. Lord Blackthorn, seemingly oblivious to the tension, turned his attention to Cassandra. "So, my dear, how old are you, if I may ask?" "I'm 19, my lord," Cassandra replied, offering him a demure smile. 19, The older man's gaze swept over her, and Cassandra felt a shiver of discomfort. "A most delightful age," Lady Blackthorn added with a grin. "And a very beautiful maiden as well," Lord Blackthorn complimented, and his wife stared at him with contempt. Her husband had been known for frolicking around with younger girls. Most of them were girls who were unlucky to find their match and somehow ended up in Uncle Patty's brothel as paid prostitutes. "And how, pray tell, did you and my son come to meet?" Lord Blackthorn asked. Cassandra felt her heart skip a beat, and she quickly schooled her features into a light-hearted expression. "Oh, it's all such a blur, my lord. All I know is that the Duke took a liking to me, and he wished to court me." She let out a soft chuckle, hoping to convey an air of innocent charm. Lord Blackthorn let out a booming laugh whilst shaking his head. "That's my boy, all right. When he wants something, he goes after it with single-minded determination." Lady Blackthorn's eyes narrowed, and Cassandra caught a flash of something akin to contempt in her gaze as she looked at her husband. Cassandra couldn't help but wonder if the older woman knew more than she was letting on. The silence that followed was palpable until Aunt Eleanor cleared her throat and her voice laced with a hint of skepticism. "And what, pray tell, do the Blackthorns do to amass such wealth? I've heard whispers about your family's dealings in certain unsavory activities." Lady Blackthorn's expression hardened, and Cassandra could see the tension in her shoulders. Yes, the rumors. Well, you see, my dear lady, we have had our fair share of challenges when it comes to our business ventures. There have been instances where some of our employees have taken advantage of the opportunities we provide, engaging in illicit activities without our knowledge. Lord Blackthorn nodded, his brow furrowed. "You know how it is, Lady Eleanor. When there's easy money to be made, it's hard to curb the temptation. But we've worked tirelessly to root out such individuals and ensure the integrity of our operations." Aunt Eleanor's gaze remained skeptical, and Cassandra could see the wheels turning in her mind. "I see. And yet these rumors, as you call them, seem to persist. Surely, you must have some way of addressing the concerns of the ton." Lord Blackthorn let out a weary sigh. Yes, the ton and their insatiable appetite for gossip. We've tried to set the record straight, but you know how these writers are. Anything to stir up a scandal, they'll jump at the chance. Cassandra felt a growing sense of unease as the conversation continued, and as the dinner came to a close, she rose from the table, smoothing her hands over the delicate fabric of her gown. "Thank you so much for your hospitality, Lady Blackthorn, Lord Blackthorn," she said whilst offering them a gracious smile. The meal was simply divine. The carriage was waiting outside, and Cassandra was about to step out the door when Lady Blackthorn's voice stopped her. "Miss Fairmont, if I may have a word with you in private?" Cassandra felt unease, but she nodded, following the older woman to a secluded alcove. "My dear," Lady Blackthorn began with her voice low and measured, "I must ask, do you truly care about the reputation of my family?" Cassandra felt her heart skip a beat. I'm not sure I understand, Lady Blackthorn." The older woman's eyes narrowed with a hint of steel in her gaze. The rumors, my dear. The whispers about our questionable dealings, not to mention my husband's proclivity for younger women. She let out a soft, humorless laugh. If you cared about such things, you would have rejected my son's courtship outright, right? Cassandra's mind raced. I don't care about those rumors, Lady Blackthorn. If I did, I would have indeed rejected your son's advances. Lady Blackthorn's lips curled into a wry smile. I see. Well, then, I suppose I should be grateful that both you and my son are such talented liars. It will certainly serve you well, should you become part of this family. With that, she inclined her head, dismissing Cassandra. Anna, one of the infamous girls of Uncle Patty's brothel, had her back arched while Duke Blackthorn penetrated deep into her in a fast motion. Her moans were cut short when a knock on the door was heard. Anna laid on the bed naked while Damien quickly put on his trousers on his way to answer the door. Damien's heart raced as he opened the door, coming face to face with his mother's stern gaze. The scent of sex hung heavy in the air, and he knew he had been caught red-handed. Mother, he began, trying to block her entry, but it was too late. Her eyes widened as she caught sight of the N. Naked Anna sprawled on his bed. Get out of my house, you wretched girl. Lady Blackthorn spat with her voice dripping with contempt. She didn't even give Anna a chance to cover herself before ushering her out, heedless of Damien's protests. Once the door was slammed shut, Lady Blackthorn rounded on her son with her eyes blazing with fury. Damien Blackthorn, how dare you defile this house with that trollop? The same trollop your father had been cavorting with, no doubt. Damien winced, offering a sheepish apology, but his mother was having none of it. And where were you, pray tell, during the dinner I had so carefully planned for Miss Fairmont and her aunt? She demanded. I had to handle a situation with the shipment, Damien admitted with his gaze falling to the floor. Lady Blackthorn's eyes narrowed. What happened? Damien let out a heavy sigh. A few days ago, Barnes was jumped by some rivals. Turns out they were from the Thierry family, the head of the most powerful Italian crime syndicate in London. They wanted a cut of the shipment as payment for his release, not money. His mother's face paled, and for a moment, Damien thought she might faint. Damien, you must extricate yourself from this mess immediately, she hissed. The Thierry family is not to be trifled with. Wash your hands of this illegal business, do you hear me? Damien nodded. I will, Mother. Once the current shipments have been traded, I'll ensure all future dealings are above board. Lady Blackthorn let out a weary sigh while pinching the bridge of her nose. See that you do. And for heaven's sake, clean this room. It reeks of male and female private parts. She paused with a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. Oh, and I'll be sending some gifts for Miss Fairmont in your name. I do so like that girl. With that, she swept out of the room. Meanwhile, Cassandra sat patiently as Aunt Eleanor's nimble fingers worked through her hair, weaving the dark strands into an elegant updo. The older woman's brow was furrowed in concentration, but Cassandra couldn't help the melancholy that seeped into her voice. I don't understand why the Duke couldn't be bothered to join us for dinner, she murmured with her gaze fixed on her own reflection in the mirror. If he truly cared, he would have made the effort. Eleanor's hand stilled for a moment, and she met Cassandra's eyes in the mirror, offering her a sympathetic smile. My dear, try not to be too hard on the young man. I'm sure he had his reasons, Eleanor said. Even if they don't make sense to us, she concluded unapologetically. Cassandra sighed with her shoulders slumping. If he wanted to be there, Aunt, he would have been. There's no excuse for his absence. Child, just take a look at you, Eleanor said with a smile as they both stared at the mirror, gazing upon Cassandra's reflection. Your parents would be so proud of the beautiful woman you're becoming. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation, and a maid entered, carrying a beautifully wrapped basket. A delivery for Miss Fairmont, from the Duke of Westbridge, she announced with her eyes sparkling with excitement. Cassandra felt a flutter of anticipation as she took the basket. Her fingers traced the delicate flowers that adorned the lid. Carefully, she lifted the lid, revealing an array of decadent pastries and a sealed envelope. With trembling hands, she unfolded the letter with her eyes widening as she read the elegant script. And, listen to this, she breathed with her voice barely above a whisper, "My dearest Cassandra, underscore your beauty shines brighter than the sun, a radiant light that warms my soul. I long to hold you in my arms, to feel your heartbeat next to mine. Each moment spent apart is pure agony, for my heart yearns for your touch. Please, my love, say you'll be mine, and let me worship you forevermore." Cassandra's cheeks flushed as she finished reading, and she looked up to see Eleanor beaming at her. "Oh, my dear, your parents must be so proud, looking down on you from heaven," the older woman exclaimed as her eyes shone with unshed tears. "You have blossomed into a truly remarkable young woman." Cassandra smiled, her heart swelling with a mix of joy and trepidation. "I can't believe he wrote this to me. I got Duke Damien Blackthorn, the Duke of Westbridge, to write a love poem for me," she emphasized while squealing. She couldn't wait to share this news with Elizabeth. At that moment, she didn't care how ominous his family was, especially after what his mother had said to her before she left. Cassandra readied the carriage, ready to pay Elizabeth a visit and tell her all about what had just happened. Her heart raced as she stepped out of the carriage with the basket of gifts from the Duke clutched tightly in her hands. She had been so eager to share the news with her dear friend Elizabeth, but now, a nagging sense of unease crept up her spine. She remembered how Elizabeth complained to her about not being able to find a match, but there Cassandra was, coming to rub in what the Duke had done for her. She changed her mind immediately, and as she was about to turn back, she sighted Elizabeth escaping through the back of the house. Immediately, she asked the rider to follow her, and he did. Elizabeth had left town and now entered the villages, and Cassandra demanded that the carriage be brought to a halt. As she watched Elizabeth disappear into the village, Cassandra hesitated, glancing back at the carriage driver. "I'll just be a moment," she assured him, ignoring his concerned protests. "Aunt Eleanor won't mind if I take a brief stroll." With that, Cassandra set off with her steps quickening as she followed the trail of her friend. The villagers eyed her curiously, no doubt taken aback by her solely on catching up to Elizabeth. Finally, she spotted Elizabeth ducking into a doorway, and Cassandra quickened her pace, determined to find out where her friend was headed. As she approached the half-open door, she heard a voice, Elizabeth's voice, calling out a name in a tone Cassandra had never heard before. "My love." Cassandra's breath caught in her throat as she peered through the opening, her eyes widening in shock at the scene that unfolded before her. There was Elizabeth, locked in a passionate embrace with a man. Their clothes were quickly discarded as they tumbled onto a bed. Cassandra felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Her grip on the basket tightened until her knuckles turned white. She should have turned away, should have respected her friend's privacy, but she found herself rooted to the spot, unable to tear her gaze away. What was Elizabeth doing? And with whom? Cassandra's mind raced with 1,000 questions swirling through her thoughts. Swallowing hard, Cassandra took a step back with her heart pounding in her chest. She needed to get away, to process what she had just witnessed. With a heavy sigh, she turned on her heel and hurried back to the waiting carriage. What would she tell Aunt Eleanor? And how would she ever look at Elizabeth the same way again? The carriage driver eyed her with concern as she approached. "My lady, is everything all right? Your aunt will be most displeased if you've wandered off." Cassandra offered him a shaky smile. I'm quite all right, thank you. Please, take me back home. I've had quite enough adventure for one day." As the carriage rumbled, Cassandra stared out the window with her thoughts consumed by what she had just witnessed. She had always known Elizabeth to be a free spirit, but this was something else entirely. Cassandra couldn't help but wonder what other secrets her friend was hiding. She felt betrayed. She knew all too well the consequences of such scandals, but what would happen if the two were to discover Elizabeth's proclivities? As Aunt Eleanor bustled about, laying out out an array of lavish gowns for Cassandra to try on, Cassandra found it increasingly difficult to focus on the impending ball. "My dear, I know you've already found your match in the Duke, but that's no reason not to look your absolute best tonight," Eleanor chirped, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Just imagine, all eyes will be on you as the belle of the ball." Cassandra nodded absently. Her mind still reeled from what she had witnessed earlier. The image of Elizabeth, locked in a passionate embrace with a stranger, was seared into her memory, and she couldn't shake off the feeling of betrayal. "Aunt," she began hesitantly, How scandalous would it be if a woman of royalty were to engage in forbidden actions with a mere man?" Eleanor's brows shot up, and she paused, studying Cassandra's flushed expression. "Forbidden actions, you say? My dear, are you referring to intimate relations outside of marriage?" Cassandra nodded, her gaze falling to the floor. "Yes, Aunt." Eleanor let out a soft chuckle, shaking her head. "Well, you're right, it would be utterly scandalous for a woman of noble birth to engage in such activities before her wedding night." She paused as her expression turned thoughtful. "Do you know someone who has engaged in such?" she asked, and immediately, Cassandra denied knowing such. "I would strongly advise you to distance yourself from whosoever happens to be in such a scandalous situation. The tongue can be merciless when it comes to such matters, and you don't want to risk being dragged into the scandal yourself." Cassandra felt a pang of guilt at the thought of abandoning Elizabeth, but she knew her aunt was right. The reputation of the Blackthorns was already tarnished enough. She couldn't afford to have her own name associated with such a scandal. I don't know this woman personally, Aunt," she lied, forcing a smile. "I was just curious, that's all." Eleanor nodded, and her gaze softened. "I see. Well, in that case, let's focus on the matter at hand, shall we? I won't have you distracted by idle gossip." As her aunt continued prattling on about the event, Cassandra found herself lost in thought. Her mind raced with the implications of what she had witnessed. How could she protect Elizabeth from the consequences of her actions? And more importantly, how could she ensure that her own reputation remained untarnished? The night of the ball had fast approached, and as the grand ballroom came alive with the sounds of music and laughter, Cassandra found herself anxiously scanning the crowd. Her eyes searched for any sign of her dear friend Elizabeth. She had positioned herself near the entrance, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Duke when he arrived, but her mind was preoccupied with a different concern. Discreetly, she approached the gentleman responsible for announcing the debutantes, clearing her throat delicately. "Pardon me, sir, but I was wondering if you might have a list of the young ladies who are to be presented tonight." The man nodded with his brow furrowing slightly. "Certainly, my lady." "Splendid. I'd like to inquire about a Miss Elizabeth Ashwood," Cassandra asked politely. "Look here." He began rifling through his papers, moving silently as he scanned the names. After a moment, he looked up with an apologetic expression on his face. "I'm afraid I don't see Elizabeth Ashwood on the list, my lady." Cassandra felt her heart skip a beat. "Are you quite sure?" she pressed with her voice tinged with a hint of desperation. "I was certain she had registered as a debutante for the season." The man shook his head. "No, my lady, I'm quite certain her name is not here. Perhaps there has been a mix-up, but I can assure you, I have the complete list of tonight's participants." Cassandra's mind raced, and her brow furrowed in confusion. Where could Elizabeth be? Has something happened to her? Or had she, perhaps, decided not to attend after all? Thanking the man, Cassandra moved away with her gaze sweeping the ballroom once more. But after all her efforts, she could not spot her friend's familiar face among the sea of elegantly dressed young women. A sense of unease settled in the pit of her stomach. Something was not right, and Cassandra couldn't shake the feeling that it had to do with the scandalous scene she had witnessed earlier. Momentarily, the Duke's arrival was announced. Drawing the attention of the room, Cassandra found herself torn between the excitement of seeing him and the growing concern for her friend's well-being. She would have to find a way to discreetly inquire about Elizabeth's whereabouts without drawing unwanted attention to the situation. The last thing she needed was for her own reputation to become embroiled in another scandal. With a deep breath, Cassandra plastered a smile on her face, determined to maintain her composure and enjoy the evening, at least on the surface. But underneath, her mind was whirling, consumed by worry for her friend. Cassandra's heart fluttered as the Duke approached her with his gaze fixed solely on her. His eyes swept over her elegant gown. "There's the most beautiful woman on the planet. I've been searching for you all evening." She felt a blush creep up her cheeks as she met his warm smile. "You're too kind, Your Grace. And you look quite dashing yourself." Their conversation flowed easily, and Cassandra couldn't help but feel a sense of relief at how comfortable she felt in his presence. When he asked about her dinner with his family, she couldn't help but chuckle. "Your mother is quite the formidable woman," she admitted with her eyes sparkling with mirth. "But I must say, I found her rather amusing." The Duke laughed. The sound of it was rich and genuine. Yes, my mother has a way of leaving an impression, doesn't she?" As the orchestra began to play a slow, lilting melody, the Duke extended his hand. "My lady, may I have the honor of this dance?" Cassandra placed her hand in his with her heart racing as he pulled her close. "I would be delighted," she murmured, allowing herself to be swept away by the music and the warmth of his embrace. As they moved across the dance floor, Cassandra felt all eyes upon them, but the Duke's voice, low and soothing, drew her attention back to him. "I received the gifts you sent, and most especially the poem," Cassandra said as she felt a flutter of excitement. "It was beautiful, Your Grace. The words were so poetic. Please, my love, say you'll be mine, and let me worship you forevermore." She smiled up at him, her gaze shining with affection. For a moment, it seemed like the Duke wasn't even aware of what she was saying. Then he smiled. While they danced, Damien sighted Carlos from afar. Carlos had signaled him to meet him outside. Suddenly, the Duke's expression shifted with his brow furrowing. "Forgive me, my dear, but I'm afraid I must cut our dance short. There is a matter of business I must attend to." Cassandra felt a twinge of disappointment, but she nodded, understanding. "Of course, Your Grace. Duty calls." As the Duke stepped away, Cassandra watched him hurry across the ballroom, her gaze following his every move. What could be so urgent that it would pull him away from her? "Your Grace," Carlos murmured with his voice low and urgent. "We have a situation." "What is it, my friend?" the Duke asked impatiently. Carlos then brought out a box. "A gift from the Thierrys," Carlos said as he opened the box, and it was Barnes's head. "They hijacked all our shipments and killed Barnes," Carlos continued. Damien was filled with rage, and he knew what needed to be done. "I'm sorry, Mother, but I will not let my friend's death be a waste. This means war." Cassandra was playing the piano, and suddenly, her fingers stilled on the piano keys as Elizabeth's voice rang out, breaking the peaceful silence that had enveloped the room. She turned to face her friend with a mix of relief and fear washing over her. "Cassandra, why did you stop playing?" Elizabeth whined. "How was the ball?" Cassandra asked without emotion. "You know the usual. It's always a bore, but never for you, I suppose," Elizabeth answered with a grin. Yes, I'm sure you were quite preoccupied, my dear. I must say, I would have paid handsomely just to witness you and the Duke in your little waltz all the time." Cassandra was shocked. She knew Elizabeth wasn't in attendance, so how was she aware of the happenings at the ball? She knew she had to counter everything Elizabeth would say wisely so she would be able to catch her in her lie. Clearing her throat, she offered Elizabeth a tentative smile. "So, to what do I owe the pleasure of your visit, my friend? I must admit, I'm surprised to see you here." Elizabeth's expression softened, and Cassandra felt a flicker of relief. "Can't a girl simply wish to spend time with her dearest friend?" she replied in a playful tone. Cassandra nodded, silently grateful for the change of subject. Of course, of course. I'm always happy to see you, Elizabeth." "Oh, since you were at the ball you must have heard about poor Grace Whitby," Cassandra said with a forced laugh. The way she was so utterly humiliated at the ball, it was simply dreadful. Elizabeth nodded along, but something about Elizabeth's reaction didn't sit right with Cassandra. Simply dreadful. Elizabeth laughed along with Cassandra until Cassandra abruptly stopped. Funny you agree with me, Elizabeth. 'Cause there wasn't any incident involving Grace, Cassandra said. The laughter died on Elizabeth's lips, and Cassandra could see the panic in her eyes. Well, I must have been mistaken, then, Elizabeth stammered. Elizabeth, Cassandra said with her voice soft but firm, I didn't see you at the ball at all. In fact, your name wasn't even on the list of debutantes. Tell me the truth, were you even there? Her friend hesitated. Did you even attend the first ball, because I never saw you there? It's easy for you to lie to me about these things because I and the Duke were the talk of the town, so basically, anything that happens between them publicly would spread like wildfire. That's how you probably got to hear the news. Cassandra yelled out of frustration. Stop it, Cassandra, Elizabeth pleaded with a teary tone, but Cassandra went on. I saw you in the village. I followed you. What were you even doing there? Cassandra spat with disgust. That is none of your business, Elizabeth declared sternly. I saw you with a man, and you both were without garments, Cassandra blurted out, and immediately, Elizabeth slapped her on the cheeks. You think you're so special, don't you? Elizabeth spat with her voice trembling with emotion. With your beautiful gowns and your dashing Duke, while I'm left to fend for myself. I'm not as beautiful as you, neither do I have dukes and lords, old and young frolicking around me, Cassandra recoiled, stunned by Elizabeth's words. Elizabeth, no, Cassandra, you listen to me. Elizabeth interrupted, your first season was a success. I didn't find a match in my first season. So forgive me if I think balls are boring, and I don't believe that I'd find my match in my second season, Elizabeth said sternly. Elizabeth, you're unmarried, Cassandra yelled. But her friend wasn't finished. Don't you dare judge me, Cassandra Fairmont. I know I'm creating a scandalous season for myself, but at least I'm doing it with someone I am sure loves me. Tears streamed down Elizabeth's cheeks as she turned and fled the room, leaving Cassandra in stunned silence. For a long moment, Cassandra simply stood there, her mind reeling from the confrontation. She had never seen Elizabeth so angry. Slowly, Cassandra sank down onto the piano bench. Her fingers trembled as she ran them over the smooth ivory keys, while replaying the conversation her and Elizabeth had in her mind. Plagued by uncertainty, she decided to retire to her room and write a letter to the Duke. Cassandra's fingers trembled as she dipped the quill into the inkwell. She took a deep, steadying breath and began to write. My dearest Duke, in the beginning, I must confess, our courtship was nothing more than an act, a carefully choreographed dance between two people bound by duty and expectation. But as I have come to know you, my feelings have grown, and I find that I can no longer hide behind the facade. Cassandra paused as her eyes brimmed with tears as she thought of Elizabeth's harsh words. Despite the gifts and the affection you have shown me, I find myself questioning whether our relationship can truly lead to the marriage that is expected of us. There is a part of me that wonders if you see me as nothing more than a means to an end. She closed her eyes and a single tear escaped and trailed down her cheek. I wish I could say with certainty that my heart is yours, but the truth is, I am conflicted. The events of the past few days have shaken me, and I find myself questioning everything. Cassandra's grip on the quill tightened, and the ink blotted the paper as her hand trembled. I do not wish to hurt you, my dear Duke, but I feel I owe you honesty. I hope you can understand, and that you will give me the time I need to sort through the turmoil in my heart and mind. With a shaky sigh, Cassandra set the quill down, staring at the unfinished letter. She could not bring herself to send it. Not now, not when her emotions were in such a state of disarray. Crumpling the paper in her hand, she let out a soft sob, burying her face in her pillow as the tears flowed freely. Damien and his mother were enjoying a quiet breakfast outside their family's estate when the conversation turned to the gifts she had sent to Lady Cassandra. As they sat together, sipping their tea and nibbling on freshly baked pastries, Damien decided to broach the subject. Mother, I couldn't help but notice the gifts you sent to Cassandra in my name, including that rather poetic letter. The part about worshipping her forevermore, he asked with his voice tinged with a hint of irritation. His mother paused, a small smile playing on her lips. Put a scone in that mouth, child. That letter was romantic. It was your father's, you know, the one he wrote for me before his prostitution era, when what we had was love and not marriage. Lady Blackthorn said with contempt. I really do hope you find that with Cassandra, she continued with a small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. Damien opened his mouth to protest, but his mother held up a hand, silencing him. Now, tell me, did you attend the ball as I asked? Yes, mother, I did, Damien replied with a clipped tone. And I danced with Cassandra, just as you wished. His mother's lips curled into a satisfied smile. Excellent. Then it's only a matter of time before you fall in love with Miss Fairmont. The Thierrys killed Barnes, mother, Damien said sternly, entirely changing the subject. Immediately Lady Blackthorn heard the shocking news. She almost choked on her tea. Then she let out a sharp gasp as her hands trembled. Damien, you must listen to me. The Thierrys are not to be trifled with. We might have wealth and power within the country, but they have connections and resources that far exceed our own. If you seek revenge, they will crush you without a second thought. She reached across the table, grasping his hands tightly. Promise me, Damien, promise me you will let this go. I cannot bear the thought of losing you, too. Damien felt the weight of her words and the fear in her eyes. He knew he should heed her warning, but the thirst for vengeance burned within him. I promise, mother, he lied with his voice barely above a whisper. As his mother breathed a sigh of relief, Damien felt the resolve harden within him. The Thierrys had crossed a line, and he would not rest until they paid for aggressions, no matter the cost. As night fell, Damien's trusted friend Jamie approached him with an urgent message. The Thierrys' youngest son, Luigi, is going to be in town tonight, he whispered with his eyes darting around nervously. Damien felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, a chance to strike back at the family that had taken so much from him. But he knew he had to be careful, lest he risk the wrath of the Thierrys and their vast network of connections. Thank you, Jamie, Damien replied in a low tone. I have a plan in place, Jamie nodded with his brow furrowed with concern. Whatever you need, Damien. Just be careful, my friend. Damien offered a reassuring smile. Don't worry, Jamie. I've got it all under control. That evening, Damien made his way to the Gentlemen's Club, a well-known gathering place for the noble elite. As he mingled with the other guests, he kept a watchful eye on the door, waiting for Luigi Thierry to make his appearance. Sure enough, the young Thierry heir soon arrived. His arrogant swagger drew the attention of all in the room. Damien watched as he chatted and laughed with the other men, with his gaze occasionally drifting to a young woman, Anna, who seemed to be doing her best to catch his eye. Damien nodded to Anna, signaling that the time had come. With a coy smile, she approached Luigi. Her gown was revealing just enough to pique his interest. As she waved her fan, beckoning him to follow, Damien slipped out of the room, ensuring that several witnesses saw him depart. In a secluded alcove, Anna led Luigi with her lips parted in a seductive smile. I have a special treat for you, Your Grace, the Thierry heir grinned with his hands reaching for her. Ah, my lovely, I thought you'd never ask. But as he leaned in to kiss her, Anna pulled back, wagging a finger. Ah, not so fast, my darling. I have something special in mind. She led him to a private room, where a decanter of fine wine awaited them. Luigi's eyes lit up, and he eagerly poured himself a glass, downing it in a single gulp. Exquisite, he murmured while reaching for another. Anna watched with a coy smile, slowly sipping her own drink as she added the potent drugs Damien had provided. Luigi, oblivious to the danger, continued to imbibe. His movements began growing increasingly sluggish. I think I've had enough. Come to me, my dear, Luigi said sluggishly while reaching out his hands to her. Anna begged him to have one more cup, and he agreed. While he drank the last cup, he slumped on the bed. Mr. Thierry, she whispered, trying to check for proof of life. When she realized he wasn't breathing, she slipped out of the room, right after adjusting her hair and her dress. That same night, Damien rushed to Anna's quite modest home in hopes that she had accomplished the mission. Knocking urgently on the door, he was greeted by a somber-faced Anna. "It's done," she said simply with her voice barely above a whisper. Damien felt a shiver of satisfaction run down his spine. "Luigi Thierry is dead, then?" he asked. Anna nodded. Damien let out a slow breath. "Good." But Anna's response caught him off guard. "I hear you've been courting a